Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Christina Kishimoto with the stories we must tell. I am so excited today. We have a very special guest, Monica Santana Rosen. What a wonderful and beautiful name. She is from Alma Advisory Group. She is the CEO of the company, but she is an educator who has worked in various spaces, the nonprofit space, the public school space, the search firm space. So excited to talk to you today, Monica. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here.
So I want to have some time with you today to have people get to know you, get to know your work, and to talk about some of the hotbed issues of today. Not all of them. I don't think there is enough time for just the politics of today, but certainly talk about some of the things that really matter to women in leadership today and the things that they're experiencing. I know that you, as one of the areas of expertise you bring, I know that you have run various executive level searches, and I'd like to spend some time talking about that because this is just that time of year when we're announcing lots of new appointments into the superintendency. And so tell us a little bit about the work that you do in that space.
Yeah, I'd love to. So, Alma Advisory Group leads searches all around the country. We do C-suite level and up in K-12 organizations, school systems, as well as nonprofit organizations. And the thing that I focus on a lot in creating this practice is really helping those decision makers ensure that they're mitigating bias as much as possible every step of the way. And it's very challenging in a space that tends to favor and hire over and over again. You see the makeup of superintendents around the country tend to be white male. That's not to say there aren't very diverse, talented leaders out there ready to take on great roles. So we spend a lot of time focusing on those practices that allow candidates to really demonstrate what they bring and clear away some of the noise that tends to hurt leaders of color and women leaders who are applying for these same roles.
So let's talk about that because we know that our nation for the last 10 years has been majority students of color in seats. In fact, we're at about 55% students of color in seats. But the representation of the adults around them at the teacher, principal, and superintendent level has not diversified and has not kept pace. And in addition to that, we know that 30% of superintendents in the nation are women, which means 70% are men. And that's an interesting statistic to talk about because of the fact that the majority of teachers in our nation, over 75%, are women. And also the majority of principals today and for the past decade have been women. And so you have this pipeline of women, and somehow at the end of that pipeline, the superintendent chosen is a man in the majority of cases. What do you attribute that to today?
Yeah. Um, you know, the first is that you want to make sure you're going out there and finding talent in unique and different ways. We are out there utilizing our network, talking to people who can tell us and share with us those leaders that have proven track records who might not be the obvious choice. There are many amazing, brilliant women out there who are head down, getting their work done day in and day out that aren't necessarily thinking of themselves as ready for that next move in their career pathway. We're often tapping leaders on the shoulders and saying, hey, you're an amazing leader. We would love for you to consider this role. We've seen some good research out there that indicates women tend to be less likely to consider themselves ready to make leaps like this. They want to have 100% of the experience in their repertoire before they move forward. We find that men are, research is indicating men are less likely to do that. So they're more likely to put their name in the hat for consideration. So first is cultivating those groups of leaders to be considered. The second, though, is knowing if we want to have leadership that looks different than the way our representation looks today, we have to be willing to choose leaders who have not sat in the seat yet. If we want to change the representation, we have to broaden what we're considering for the role. And so our approach is very competency focused. We're looking for the demonstrated experience needed for the job that may not have taken place in the seat itself. And that allows us to consider candidates who maybe aren't sitting superintendents, but have been chief academic officers, have been chiefs of schools, have supervised networks of schools to dramatically improve outcomes for students, who have managed complex teams and complex politics, maybe didn't have the job yet, and get them in front of boards for their consideration.
Yeah, it's interesting, Monica, that you say that because we do that for men. It's not that that's so novel, right? We do
Right.
that for men, and we don't question the fact that it's their first superintendency, right? But for women, for some reason, we don't have the same consideration. In a recent article, we talked to Dr. Gloria Siriza, who's the new superintendent in San Diego County School District, the first woman in 76 years of history there
Wow.
in a very diverse and very inclusive community. And so if communities like that take that long to hire a woman, then certainly across the nation, we're still going to see that lack of kind of change in mindset. Which is really a perspective that I love to talk a little bit about. Is it a mindset issue? Do we need to talk to boards of education around the way they may have internalized bias without realizing it, about this kind of leaned preference towards men being more of leadership ready as opposed to a woman, and the way in which we look at women today?
It's one of the most important things that anyone making such a consequential decision has to do. We have to understand that bias exists, that we all have them. It's part of our human nature. And we're all conditioned in this society to think of people in terms of stereotype, even though our personal values would say we would never do that. When the way that we listen to a woman, the way we engage with women leaders, what feels comfortable to us in our gut about how a woman leader is behaving, right, is often based on bias. And so we have to at least build awareness that that is just what it is, and build systems and processes when we're interviewing and screening that allow us to control for that. We're not saying we're taking it away. I can't do a training that's going to suddenly have you see women as more credible than they are, right? We're just always going to feel the way that we feel, but we need to understand that our perspective is often clouded by bias. And that means that we will second guess women leaders, women of color leaders, more quickly than we might second guess men leaders. And so in our process, we try to give boards the tools that they need to be able to acknowledge that and to be able to build a structure that sort of protects them again from themselves in that kind of a way.
And we know that bias is not just about women of color. We certainly know that if you share your LGBTQ identity, that there are assumptions and biases for that community. We know that men of color also have biases against them. If you are an accented person, I love that term. I've heard that used about me as well, as being this accented leader, which is this identity that's kind of imposed on people as well, right? There's these different biases that I think are so important to talk about, because the more we talk about it, the more we can be self-aware. We all have to be aware of these things. Monica, one of the things I love about you is your background. You were with the Chicago Public Schools. You did talent management work, which is like a favored space that I love to be in, having converted several HR departments into talent management departments, and kind of that mindset shift around how we embrace our capacity and our talent, right, from before entrance all the way through retirement. And so tell us about that work and how it's kind of shaped your work with the Chicago Public Schools has shaped your thinking, how you lead today.
Thank you so much. I love to talk about that. And when you look over the course of my entire career, which is approaching 30 years now, which is hard to believe, I've always been engaged in leadership development in some capacity or other. Like somehow that's the thread through everything. I started my career in philanthropy in New York City, where I'm born and raised, and then moved to a mentorship program called Management Leadership for Tomorrow, which was all about diversifying upper echelons of leadership. When I came to Chicago public schools, we were at the beginning of what we were calling an HR transformation. And the thought was, how do we ensure that throughout the employee life cycle, number one, people are treated well, they understand they're valued, they're taken care of, whatever their needs are as employees, so that they can attend to their jobs. And then later moved into the talent management space, as you're saying, which is we want to make sure we're identifying our best and brightest, that they know we know they're our best and brightest, and we're doing everything we can to keep them, support them in the role. And that's really what led into my consulting work 13 years ago now. We had led a significant effort around school leader pipelines and pipeline development within Chicago Public Schools. Um, and had done this work in HR. I mean, I love HR staff. They are my favorite people. They're all always trying to do the best thing. And oftentimes they're battling against systems that are super inefficient and not user friendly. And their processes and the way the work is organized works against their ability to serve schools well. So a lot of what we do is really intuitive. It's how would you like to be treated? When we put those things in place, staff just thrive. Like they have the best ideas for how to make the work better, easier for employees. Um, and on the recruitment hiring front, it's about the tools that you provide to those decision makers so that they can actually have access to the best talent and bring them into their schools and keep them there. So that's been a lot of what I've been focused on the last several years.
I love your set of experiences. I think it really shows in the way that you lead and the way you engage with educators across the nation, and really have a deep appreciation of where you have served and the way you continue to lead today, Monica. So one of the things I want to be able to spend at least a few minutes on is kind of your identity and who you are from that space. I know you're Dominicana, and as a Boricua, I understand that whole Caribbean mindset and experience, and I think that's something to proudly showcase. And so I know that you also describe yourself many times as a Black Latina,
Yes.
and would love for you to share what that means. What does it mean when you call yourself a Black Latina? Why does that matter today? And I know that I not only do I work with women across the nation, but I also work with young girls at the high school level, in terms of the Girls Policy Network and ways in which we empower for them to bring their full identity. And it's really from that space that I'm asking you this question about your identity as a Black Latina, a Dominicana, an educator. You have all of these different identities that are so important to knowing you.
Thank you so much. I love the opportunity to talk about this. And it's something that has evolved over my life. So what I would share is as a first generation immigrant, my family moved to this country in the 60s. And my identity as a child, all the way really through high school, was I'm Dominican. That's where my family's from. That's where I'm from. That's what my culture is. So I didn't have a sense of racial identity in that way as a child. I was from the Dominican Republic, Dominicana, just how you said. And as I got older and going into college, And, leaving my little enclave in the Upper West Side of Manhattan, where everyone around me was an immigrant, I get to see the rest of the world doesn't just identify me as Dominican, right? When people interact with me, they're trying to fit me into some other category. And what I realized, first of all, and many Caribbean countries do. The Dominican Republic has a complicated history around colorism, around how we value white against black, how we think about the color, your complexion, how dark your complexion is, and what that means about you. It's like very stark in my home country where my parents are from. And frankly, a lot of our history about our African roots were not really talked about. We knew about our European roots, but not so much about our African roots. So it was something I really had to seek out. And the fact of the matter is, I am biracial. More than half of my background comes from West Africa. And really tracks with the slave trade into the Dominican Republic. So it became really important to me as an older adult that I could acknowledge that. And so I see I identify as a Black Latina. That's really important to me. And it just I adopted that as the way I described myself because it feels accurate. It is accurate, and it's how I want to be known in this space.
What's interesting about that, Monica, thank you for being willing to share that. Uh, the the way in which you talk about and I don't want to misuse the term, but kind of the fluidity of identity. We often want to put people into groups and name it as a fixed group. And yet
Mhm.
that's not who we are as individual people, right? We are in and out of identity groups based on the areas that we learn more and more about ourselves as we
Mhm.
as we go into adulthood. And so I would love for you to kind of wrap us up today by giving your message, your advice to our girls in our Girls Policy Network and the young ladies that we work with who are from diverse identity groups. So when we bring them together, they are a different group and a different generation today than us. I think they share their identity, they share their questions about who they are. They're much more open, and perhaps because society is giving them better spaces to do that. And so
Yeah.
as they think about their policy voice nationally, what's your advice to them as 15, 16, 17-year-olds today?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. What I would say is you are brilliant. You are already brilliant and you have amazing things to share with the world. And when we're young and coming up, we think our value is determined by the approval we get from others. And it takes something as you get older to realize it's not the approval of others you need, it's you empowering your own voice, making it known what you believe and what you see. The minute you start to do that, you attract the people around you who like that light that you reflect. And so be your full self every day. Don't think you got to try to fit what the norms and the standards are around you or what other people approve or tell you is a good thing, right? Shine your light and you will see amazing things start to happen around you. So that would be my message.
I love your message to them. And what I love about times like this where you and I can sit down and talk is that we can talk about anything. We just
Yes.
went from conversations about the work and the workplace and representation nationally to talking about girls and their identity, and just appreciate you and our friendship. So thank you for being with us today and sharing of yourself more globally as we share this out with our network.
Thank you so much, Christina. It's a joy to be with you today. I'm looking forward to many more fantastic conversations like this one.